Please rewind this cassette.
Hey guys, welcome to Box Office Addict 87. I will be covering the weekend numbers and just kind of be talking about why I think things turned out the way they did. Before we go into this though, I've been using Box Office Mojo for years. God, I don't even know how long now. I mean, at least 10 years, but I would say longer than that. And they recently changed their format through IMDb Pro. And if you remember a few years ago, I think just a year or two ago, IMDb stopped their forums, which were one of the only forums I went to. Sorry, I got something in my throat. But IMDb stopped their forum, so I don't really check IMDb that much because there's no discussion anymore. You basically just go to see a rating of a movie, and that's about it. It's also a good place to look up something if you need to see when a movie was released. It's a lot easier to look stuff up there than Wikipedia because you just like click a name and then there's a list of all the credits. But like a lot of websites, YouTube included, they take a great streamlined format that was perfectly fine. I mean, just like really perfect. You really couldn't have done it better than Box Office Mojo. And they just make it needlessly messy and shitty. I hate this new format. It's terrible. It took all the personality away from Box Office Mojo. Like, it's the same thing. They show you where one movie's at compared to another film. You can still look at the weekend numbers and all that. But there's just something, I don't know, there's something more generic about it now. And I think it just lacks an overall clarity. I'm not a fan of this new format, and I'm very upset that this happened. And I hope at some point they go back to the original format. This is closer to the original format, but I still prefer the classic Box Office Mojo. And you could say that I'm just holding on to the past, but I don't think that's what it is. I just think that there's an elegance in the simplicity of what it was, and this now just kind of, it loses some of its impact looking at the numbers and so on. It just isn't as immediate. So we're gonna just go through some films really quick to cover them and see where they're at, and then we'll just ignore other ones because they're not worth talking about. Let's talk about Gemini Man, which has made $162 million worldwide on a budget of $130 million, $120 million from Ang Lee. This is definitely a bomb. God damn it, somebody's calling me right now and I can't answer the phone, and I'm gonna feel bad about that. Zombieland Double Tap is doing okay, not as good as the first film, which actually the first film made 75 mil domestic and 102 million worldwide, so it actually is doing as well as the first film. 61 mil domestic, so if it stays where it's at right now, it should be able to about reach the first film. I think the budget for this is 30 something million, maybe 40 million. The first film had a very low budget, but they talked about Zombieland 2 for years. I mean, it was a long fucking time they talked about making it. It's been a long time since Zombieland came out, but you know, the franchise still has some love. A $26 million opening weekend. It didn't get horrible reviews. The original crew came back. The original cast came back. So overall, they did a good job with this. This isn't a disaster. I think if they hadn't waited so long, they might have been able to have an even bigger hit on their hands. I think the zombie craze certainly died off the last few years. I think if they'd released this, God, even just 4 years ago, I think it would have made more money. I really don't know what they were thinking with the long wait. Oh my God, my fucking cat. Jesus Christ. Kiki, no. Fucking cats always love to jump on fucking tables and keyboards. You little bitch. Fuck's sakes. Alright, yeah, I have a cat now, by the way. The Addams Family is doing adequate business. 86 mil domestic, 131 million worldwide. I don't know what the fuck this movie cost. I don't think it cost that much money. The animation doesn't look that complex, but I don't know. Harriet, $11 million opening weekend. This is, of course, about Harriet Tubman and the Underground Railroad. The opening weekend's decent. I don't know the budget anymore because they don't list the budgets like they used to. But I don't think this had a very high budget. Maleficent, Mistress of Evil, is not doing nearly as well as the first film. The opening weekend was much lower at 36 million. But the international numbers are good. 299 million internationally, 387 million worldwide. if I remember correctly, the first one made like $750 million. So this is still, oh my god, Kiki, stop. Stop. I'm trying to record. You're being annoying. Always pussy jumping on my lap when I'm trying to do things. So yeah, just slightly under 400 million worldwide. I don't want to call this a bomb, but I don't see the need for this movie. I don't really get why they made a sequel to Maleficent. I don't think people were asking for that. Now let's talk about the massive success of The Joker. I mean, at this point, this movie is a major success. It was already a major success on opening weekend, but not only is DC back, they are comparable to Marvel. This film is going to bring in the same amount of profit as Endgame because the budget is so low. Sure, Endgame made $2.7 billion, but it cost like $350 million, and they spent $200 million probably on marketing. And Robert Downey Jr. got paid a shitload of money on that. This movie, on the other hand, cost $55 million. I don't think that Joaquin Phoenix probably had that much back end in it, and I'm assuming Todd Phillips got paid pretty decently, but I don't know how much money he got out of it either. He got a huge payday on The Hangover, the first one, because they didn't know it would be such a hit. But $637 million international and $302 million domestic. And the holds have been phenomenal for this. I don't really get it with this movie. This movie had all this hype, and then it got good reviews, then it got mixed reviews, and then it's like all of the people that hate stuff like Last Jedi seem to be loving this movie, like Mauler types, and defending it. And this movie's become like this big argument piece now where the good guys are fighting for it and the bad people who liked, the new Star Wars movies and stuff like that, and they like Captain Marvel, they hate this movie. So apparently you can't just talk about movies anymore. It always has to be a goddamn fucking political movement. I don't really understand this, but audiences do love the film. I mean, the reception is through the roof. Who knew that the Martin Scorsese influenced Joker movie would be $1 billion? But like I said with DC, you got to think about this now. Aquaman, 1.1 billion. That was great numbers. I mean, and over 300 mil domestic. And now with this movie making $1 billion, if DC can keep this up, they're not only setting up the Batman very well to be a film that makes a lot of money, they're also setting up Wonder Woman 2 or Wonder Woman 1984. And then, of course, you have the next Aquaman film that's going to come out at some point. So DC's back on top. It's weird. As soon as they got rid of Zack Snyder, the guy that we were all saying was the problem, even though everyone just wanted to blame the producers, which they deserve blame for what they were doing, but they hired the guy. And then as soon as he's gone, all these Zack Snyder defenders are all pissed off. Like, the Zack Snyder cut. We want the Zack Snyder cut. The Zack Snyder cut. It's like, Jesus fucking Christ. And they just add this complexity, and they're very pretentious, and they make excuses for the hack that he is and how much of a fucking moron Zack Snyder is, quite frankly. And even he's come out and ranted and been pissy about it. But it's clearly just insecurity because, I mean, what can you do? What a bigger failure it is to be a Zack Snyder fan. I mean, at least if you defend The Last Jedi, it made money and got good reviews. You have that going for you. But if you defended Zack Snyder, his movies failed. They disappointed financially. They got shit reviews. And as soon as he leaves, the opposite happens. You get better reception on the movies, and they start making money. And the budgets aren't crazy. So, I mean, I don't know. It has to be so embarrassing to be a Zack Snyder fan right now. I'm not trying to be like, hey, fuck you if you're a Zack Snyder fan, but I would be very, very fucking embarrassed right now. Just because, yeah, look at this. I mean, this is doing better than Batman v Superman and Man of Steel. How the fuck did that happen? How is this movie by itself making more money internationally than a Batman Superman movie? And the only thing I come down to is appeal and overall quality. I think this is more appealing as a premise, and I think the quality is overall better. But Joker cannot be denied. It's going to be, I mean, in many ways, I guess it's really the talked about film of the year, all things considered. And yeah, reviews, good or bad. It seems like Joaquin Phoenix is pretty locked for an Oscar nomination. I think this will have a surprise turnout at the Oscars overall. I think this will perform very well. Even though a lot of people in the industry seem to be scared by the movie. Holy shit. Fucking Terminator, man. I mean, what were they thinking? Who thinks a Terminator movie can make money anymore, especially in the States? I don't know how many times this has to be said. Stop making fucking Terminator movies. David Ellis and Megan Ellis, it's over. It's fucking over. I mean, I don't want to tell you guys, nobody really wanted Terminator 3 when it came out, but it still had some hype. Then everybody saw it and forgot about it. Then Terminator Salvation, I thought would do well. It fucking bombed. McG. And then they come out with fucking Terminator Genesis, which did well internationally, but didn't even make 100 mil domestic. First time a Terminator film in the modern era didn't do that. And then you make this goddamn film, and it's another reboot. I mean, it's like Terminator Genesis, we're ignoring all the other films. It's another time travel movie, and the first two were the only ones in continuity. Okay. Then they're like, okay, this film, we're ignoring all the other films in continuity. It's except the first two. This is a direct sequel. This is basically what Neil Blomkamp wanted to do with the Alien franchise. So here you have a new fucking Terminator movie that had a horrible opening weekend, just like Genesis. Just like Salvation really didn't have a good opening weekend. Its opening weekend was pretty shitty, all things considered. Let me explain a few problems with the Terminator franchise. One, the premise is silly in the modern day and does not benefit longer storylines, more story. It was very tight-knit, but also the idea of like robots traveling through time to kill a woman and all that just played a lot better in the 80s and 90s than it does today. I'm not even really sure why. It's just more goofy now. Also, I just don't think modern people, I don't think millennials, I don't think the young give a shit about Terminator. I still think like Terminator 2 is a very iconic movie, but there's nostalgia for all these franchises like Star Wars and so on, and I just don't think it exists for Terminator, and I don't think it ever really did. I think most people just think of Terminator as a James Cameron thing. I don't think they necessarily think of like, wow, I love the whole Terminator mythology and franchise. Another thing to point out, why do these films always get budgeted so high? This is the mistake they've been making for years. They treat every new Terminator film like it's going to make $800 million. They never even like think another way. They never think that maybe the movie won't make that kind of money. Like when Terminator 3 came out, I understand how they put $200 million into that movie. Terminator 1 was a low budget film, but Terminator 2 was the first film to ever cost $100 million. So Terminator 3, years later, it's expected that it would have a big budget like that because it's Terminator. I still think they spent too much money, but you can understand it on some level. They thought this franchise was that big, and then it didn't perform. At least, with how much they spent on it, just didn't make enough money. So Terminator Salvation, once again, they spend $200 fucking million. And a lot of people, I remember that year thinking that movie was going to make like $600, $700 million. It didn't even make $400 million. Now, I would say to you, if that movie had been made on a lower budget, let's say like $85 million, and they didn't focus on a bunch of CGI, I think that movie could have made profit, for sure. Star Trek that year came out and made $385 million, and it got a sequel and was considered a profitable film. Yet that Terminator Salvation film was hurt by how much money they put into it. Terminator Genesis, once again, what did that movie cost? Like $150 million? I think more than that. Why did they think that film up? Because Arnold was back again? Did they think that movie was going to make, $700 million? It made $450 million worldwide, but it underperformed again. And they had all this fucking money in it, and that's what killed them. So then you get to this movie with James Cameron coming back after he endorsed Genesis, which, that backfired. And they spent $185 million on this goddamn movie. They could have easily spent $90 million. Let's just say $100 million with Tim Miller. I mean, this is Tim fucking Miller. This is the guy that made Deadpool for $58 million. Right? This is a guy that can work with low budgets and do CGI. Just like Neil Blomkamp. This guy does not need a big budget. For some reason, They put $185 million into this movie. So once again, they must have thought that it was going to make $600, $700 million. And the marketing budget was huge. And here we are with a $29 million goddamn opening weekend. I mean, are they fucking retarded? Why do they keep giving these fucking budgets to Terminator movies? Like, I don't, lower budget, 70 to 100 million, and then if the movie makes 450 million worldwide, like Genesis did, it's a hit. If your movie makes 450 million worldwide on a budget that's 100 million or less, it's not a bomb. It's not a huge hit, but it's a break-even movie, and you can start a franchise from there. They should have just started from just started from scratch. New cast, new premise, everything. Done a new Terminator film on a lower budget, and then it probably could have opened to 40, 45 million, and yeah, made 400 million worldwide. Instead, with Tim Miller and Cameron, who were clashing during production, apparently they were fighting through the scripting. And Cameron really wasn't that involved with the film. He was busy making Avatar 2. Here we are with this fucking abysmal opening. So that's all the reasons I can think of, franchise fatigue, too many reboots, too many Terminator 3s, the budgets being way too fucking high, and just a premise overall being stretched too thin. There was no need for this, even with the most hype this movie had. The most hype that this movie had, it still never was going to be a successful film. Never. Even if it got rave reviews. It got okay reviews. Even if it got great reviews, it would still have been a failure. Now, I made a video 2.5, 3 years ago about this called Terminator 6 Reaction. And if I remember correctly, I got a lot of flack in the comments. I could have remembered this wrong, but I was basically talking about how Terminator 6 was completely pointless. And even with Tim Miller being involved and Cameron coming back and the way they were passionately talking about AI and so on. And a lot of really fun interviews, and I'm a Tim Miller fan. Although, does this expose Tim Miller a little bit? That maybe, because there was an argument with Deadpool 2 that it was well, if only Tim Miller could have done it. But it's Deadpool 2 was still a big success, and now he has a bomb, his first film following it. Maybe Tim Miller isn't all he was hyped up to be as well. And also, James Cameron's name doesn't really mean anything. And is James Cameron setting himself up for some major disappointments financially with the Avatar sequels? Which, if I was him right now, I'd be getting very worried. But granted, there's a big difference between James Cameron and these other filmmakers and the Terminator franchise. I mean, he has a way of making a movie get hype out of nowhere, in the way that, a Peter Jackson can occasionally. Fuck. I mean, this is embarrassing. 123 million was the international opening. I cannot see this making that much money. I mean, there's some people thinking this is going to top out under 300 million, although I think it'll make a little bit more than that. There's no way they break even on this. There's no fucking way they make a profit off this. So this was a complete waste of time, once again, from the Ellis children, the brother and sister who just like to spend dad's money on Paul Thomas Anderson bombs and Terminator bombs. That's what they like to do for some goddamn reason, and it disgusts me. 4,086 theaters. I feel bad for Arnold, man. He just can't catch a fucking break. He just can't come back as a movie star. It's like, Arnold, you're an old man. It's stupid to see an old Terminator. It just is. It's stupid. Why does he fucking age? Why are you doing an old Terminator? Why can't he be the bad guy in a Terminator movie? Why can't he kill John Connor? Why can't you do the de-aging thing and have an evil T-800 again? And I don't mean Terminator Salvation or Genesis. I mean the bad guy is a T-800 again, and Arnold Schwarzenegger does mocap. I mean, that could be cool. It'd be cool to see an evil T-800 again. It's one of my favorite movie villains of all time. But he's only been bad in one goddamn movie. It's like everyone forgot the Terminator started out so small. Everyone keeps trying to do Terminator 2. Everyone keeps trying to recapture the blockbuster that was Terminator 2. Everyone wants to make that $100 million groundbreaking special effects extravaganza, this achievement, one of the highest grossing films of all time, At the time, that was one of the biggest movies ever. It had the biggest opening weekend for an R-rated movie. And everyone keeps trying to make that, and they forget that the first Terminator was this lower budgeted, thriller, science fiction thriller with a few set pieces and was really about characters, and it was a chase movie. Everyone keeps distancing themselves from that movie and just expanding and blowing up Terminator 2. And they keep missing the essence of what Terminator was. Like, it was okay for James Cameron to open Terminator up more with the second film, but everyone else keeps trying to open it up even more and more. And yeah, it just gets more silly, where Terminator 1, one of the great things about it was just its simplicity. To go back to the Box Office Mojo thing, it's a similar thing here. Box Office Mojo's new format is the Terminator Dark Fate uh, of new formats of websites that I like to visit. It was just a disastrous idea. This was never a good idea. Tim Miller could have been doing something else. James Cameron, this was a waste of his fucking time. It just lost a bunch of people money, and honestly, nobody gives a shit about it. I mean, it's talked about. There's going to be videos about it. It'll help YouTubers make money, but in the scheme of things, this film is insignificant. And it's a real lesson. It's just like you have to nurture these things, and you really have to be patient. Had they not made a Terminator film in years, like let's say they haven't made one since Terminator 2 and this came out, or let's say they hadn't made one since at least Terminator Rise of the Machines, this movie might have done well, because people be like, man, I haven't seen Terminator in a while. But I don't know what they were thinking when we've already had, the two previous films before this that had come out and not performed that well. Wouldn't that be a sign that there's no more Terminator? And I think they thought that people are savvy enough with the internet that everybody would go in knowing that this is the official Terminator 3, and it would be great because James Cameron's involved, and that would make up for everything. But I just don't think people care about Terminator anymore. I don't think mainstream audiences are into Terminator. If your movie can't make 100 million domestic, that means domestically it's done. If it's a franchise like this, there's no reason to keep making films. And that's the miscalculation they made here. Hubris maybe. But I don't know what to say. What a bad idea. What a bad fucking idea. Let's go down and look at some other stuff. Hustlers did very well with Jennifer Lopez. The Downton Abbey movies we've covered before did extremely well. It Chapter 2, very disappointing. 457 million worldwide. Those are not great numbers. And then, of course, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Let's see where that's at with Tarantino. 370 million worldwide. I think I said that's about where it would end up. And I don't think there's really anything. Let's see where Toy Story's at, although that's been out a long enough time now that I don't think it matters. Yeah, it's about where it started at, where it ended up at. Ad Astra, I would say that's a bomb with its $90 million budget. Kevin Smith's Jay and Silent Bob reboot is not doing well. Obviously, because why the fuck would that do well? So yeah, there you go. There you go. We have Motherless Brooklyn from Edward Norton, his passion project, a horrible opening weekend of 3.5 million, although modestly budgeted. The Irishman is in here somewhere. I know it opened in limited release, but I don't see it on here for some reason. Where the fuck is The Irishman? I don't know. I'm missing this. I think it opened at like 350,000. I just don't see it. So The Irishman opened in limited release, and Deadline wrote this whole article about how it would be a bomb if it didn't go through Netflix. And then A24 from the director of The Witch is honestly doing pretty decent, considering everything. And then Parasite from Bong Joon-ho is doing decent business. Actually, really good business for how many theaters it's in. So the little indie art house films are performing decently. A lot of the big sequel franchise movies are not performing well. This includes Maleficent. This includes It Chapter 2 being a disappointment, not a bomb. Zombieland Double Tap. And of course, Terminator Dark Fate. Oh, a Dark Fate indeed. And then we have Joker, which is on its way to $1 billion and, at least 320 something mil domestic and probably a couple of Oscar nominations. So that's a major win for WB. And they have It Chapter 2, which, still made money. So they're actually doing pretty good this year so far. Although they did release Motherless Brooklyn, but they might just be a distributor for that. They probably don't have too much money in that. Western Stars. If there's any other Warner Brothers movies here, I don't fucking see it. So there you have it. I'm going to be trying to drop a review of Parasite and The Irishman this month. And hopefully you guys will tune in for that. I'm sorry if there's been a lack of content like the last week, although you got like 4 fucking videos the week before. But I just didn't have a lot of free time, and I haven't been able to do a box office addict in a while, and I usually like to wait for a new big movie to come out before I talk about it. But if you listen to the show, you're probably an addict yourself, and I encourage that. So I will see you guys for episode 88, where we'll be talking about the next big movie. I don't know what the next big movie is. What the fuck is it?